Wealth doesn't arrive with noise. It comes softly, through signs, through whispers in your spirit, through shifts you can't always explain. If you're seeing these signs, it's not luck, it's alignment. And if you ignore them, you may delay the abundance that's already reaching for you. There was a time when you could sit in certain rooms and not feel a thing. You could laugh at the jokes that cut people down. You could nod along to empty talk, let gossip drip from your tongue like it was harmless. You could participate in conversations that went nowhere and planted nothing. But now, something in you flinches when small-mindedness enters the room. Something tightens in your chest when you hear people tearing down others instead of building themselves. What once felt normal now feels noisy. What once passed the time now drains your spirit. That's no accident, that's growth. It starts subtly. Maybe you walk away from a conversation and feel tired, not physically, but spiritually, like your soul has been around noise it didn't need to hear. Maybe you hear someone belittle a dream, and instead of laughing along, you feel a stirring inside you that says, no more. You begin to recognize the difference between entertainment and entrapment. And suddenly the old habits, the old talk, the old company, none of it fits the new you. Small-mindedness speaks in circles. It repeats pain. It rehearses failure. It builds walls out of fear and convinces people they are being wise. It laughs at ambition. It mocks anything unfamiliar. It chooses judgment over curiosity, and it thrives in low places where growth is not required. But when you're on the path to something greater, when your spirit starts reaching toward the light, small-mindedness begins to itch like a garment too tight, too worn, too unworthy of your new becoming. You don't have to declare it out loud. You don't have to tell anyone that their words no longer serve you. You simply grow, and your growth will speak for itself. You'll begin to walk out of rooms you used to beg to be in. You'll stop answering calls that feel like chores to your energy. You'll begin to crave more depth, vision, expansion, truth. Because when your mind begins to stretch, it refuses to shrink again. When your vision gets bigger, your tolerance for pettiness gets smaller. And let this be clear, it doesn't make you better than anyone. It makes you ready to stop living below your potential, ready to choose purpose over popularity, ready to build instead of break, ready to grow instead of gossip, ready to walk with people who challenge you, not chain you to who you used to be. You begin to realize that every word you speak is a seed. Every conversation you join is a current. It will take you somewhere, and you become intentional. You want to be around people who talk ideas, not just people. People who speak life into rooms, not death. People who dream with their eyes open and move like they know something sacred lives inside them. You don't want empty calories for the soul anymore. You want nourishment. You want substance. You want truth. And when you look back, you'll see it. The moment your spirit started rejecting small talk and small dreams, the moment you stopped shrinking yourself to fit into comfortable corners, the moment you traded validation for vision, that was the sign, that was the proof, that was the sacred indicator that your mind was aligning with abundance and your spirit was preparing for more. Because wealth, real wealth, can't survive in small-minded rooms. Abundance doesn't thrive in gossip, jealousy, or fear. Expansion needs space. And if your spirit has started to feel out of place in those old places, it's because you've outgrown the shadows. You've been called to walk in the light. There is a quiet, powerful shift that happens when you begin to understand the sacredness of your time. Not your schedule, not your calendar, but your time, your breath, your thoughts, your presence, your energy. You start seeing it not as something to be filled, but as something to be protected. You begin to realize that attention is cheap, but time is holy. And suddenly, you're no longer flattered by eyes on you. You're honored by peace within you. That's how you know you've stepped onto the path of real wealth. You don't chase noise anymore. You don't measure your worth by how many likes you gather, how many people call your name, or how many notifications decorate your screen. You're no longer addicted to being seen. You're now committed to being whole. And wholeness, true wholeness, doesn't require applause. It doesn't require validation. It requires alignment. It requires silence, it requires space to grow, and growth doesn't always perform for the crowd. You begin to see how often people will waste their entire lives trying to be noticed, louder, prettier, funnier, more provocative, just to hold the attention of people who don't even see them. You begin to see how cheap attention can be bought, how easily it fades, how empty it feels when you've sacrificed your integrity just to keep it. But time doesn't lie. Where you place your time is where your real values live. Where you place your time is where your wealth is building itself. And that kind of currency can't be stolen, faked, or borrowed. It must be earned, and it must be guarded. You stop responding to everything, not because you're rude, but because you're focused. You stop saying yes to invitations that pull you away from your purpose, not because you're better than anyone, but because you've tasted what happens when you pour into yourself. You've felt the strength that comes when your day reflects your priorities, not your fears, not your distractions, not your insecurities, but your true self. And when you've felt that power, that alignment, that clarity, attention from the world no longer seduces you the same way. You're not interested in being everywhere. You're only interested in being where you belong. You begin to understand that every minute is a transaction. Every yes costs something. Every conversation is an investment. And every interruption has a price. And so you guard your time the way the wealthy guard their resources, because you know that time is the only thing you can't earn back. You can lose money and recover. You can lose relationships and heal. But once a day is gone, it never returns. So you stop spending time like you have a limitless supply. You start spending it like the rare, priceless jewel it is. And this is not about being busy. Wealth is not always busy. Sometimes it sits quietly, sometimes it reads slowly, sometimes it takes long walks, asks deep questions, listens before it speaks. Sometimes it rests, restores, retreats. That's not laziness. That's wealth understanding that time must not be squandered on performance, but invested in alignment. The richest people in spirit, in wisdom, in impact are not those who were everywhere for everyone. They are those who knew how to withdraw when the world got too loud, those who knew how to choose themselves even when no one else noticed. You see, when you prioritize your time, you reclaim your life. You stop giving it away to every request, every expectation, every passing trend. You stop waking up tired from doing everything except what feeds your soul. You become rooted, disciplined, alive. And you understand deeply that attention is fleeting, but time, well managed, becomes legacy. There is a sacred point in your journey when silence becomes more nourishing than sound. When the noise of the world, its opinions, its headlines, its distractions, its endless calls for your attention, no longer excites or entertains you. Instead, it begins to exhaust you. It begins to feel like static in your soul. You find yourself backing away from the crowds, retreating from the chaos, turning down the volume not just on your devices, but on your life. Not because you're hiding, not because you're lost, but because you finally started hearing something deeper, yourself. When you begin to crave silence, it's not a sign of isolation. It's a sign of alignment. Silence is not empty. It is full of clarity, full of truth, full of the things you missed while you were too busy trying to keep up with everything and everyone. Silence becomes your sanctuary. It becomes the only place where you can truly hear what your heart has been trying to say all along. You stop needing to fill the room with your voice. You stop feeling the urge to comment on every situation. You begin to realize that wisdom does not always speak, It listens, it observes, it gathers, it waits. And in that waiting, in that stillness, power begins to rise in you. Not the kind that needs an audience, but the kind that builds unshakable foundations inside your soul. You used to reach for noise to escape the discomfort of your thoughts. You drown your unease in music, in chatter, in scrolling, in updates, in anything that would keep you from sitting alone with the truth. But now you welcome the quiet. You make room for it. You carve it into your day like a ritual, because you've learned that what's found in silence cannot be bought, borrowed, or begged for. It must be received. It must be respected. Silence teaches you the rhythm of your own spirit. It shows you what matters. It exposes what no longer fits. It reveals the stories you've been telling yourself, the ones that kept you small, the ones that kept you afraid, the ones that made you believe you weren't worthy of more. In silence, all your masks fall. All your pretenses dissolve. There is nothing to perform, nothing to prove, just you. And the voice within that says, "Now that I have your attention, let me remind you who you are." You begin to crave mornings without conversation. You find comfort in long walks with only your breath to keep you company. You start turning off the television not out of boredom, but out of reverence for the stillness that speaks when everything else is muted. You begin to honor your need for quiet as a divine call, not a weakness. And the more you respond to that call, the stronger your inner voice becomes. The more certain your steps become, the more grounded your presence becomes. People might not understand it. They may ask why you've become so quiet, why you're not the same. And that's fine. You no longer owe the world an explanation for your peace. You no longer need to shout over the noise to prove your growth. You understand now that silence is not the absence of power, it's the container of it. And while the world races, screams, demands, and distracts, you walk slowly. You breathe deeply. You listen carefully. And in that quiet, you remember that real wealth, spiritual, emotional, mental, is never loud. There comes a season in life when the real work begins, quietly, invisibly, beyond applause or acknowledgement. You're not changing your clothes, your house, your circle, or your job for show. You're fixing the foundation. You're not performing transformation for others to clap at. You're repairing what no one else can see, what lives behind your eyes, what echoes in your silence, what trembles underneath your smile. This is sacred work, because the loudest healing isn't always the most honest, and the deepest changes do not announce themselves. You're waking up each day, confronting the parts of you that are tired of pretending. You're tending to wounds that never bled but cut deep. You're unraveling old narratives that taught you to survive but never taught you how to be free. You're rewriting beliefs that were sewn into your skin before you even knew what choice looked like. You're doing the work that doesn't come with recognition, but it comes with freedom. You've stopped needing to convince others that you're okay. You've grown tired of pretending that everything is polished and presentable. You're no longer obsessed with proving you have it all together. Instead, you've turned inward, not to hide, but to heal. You're meeting yourself at the root, at the beginning, in the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are when the lights are off and no one is watching. This work isn't glamorous. It's not captured in photos or praised in posts. It's the work that happens when you choose not to send that angry text, when you forgive someone who never apologized, when you sit with your anxiety instead of escaping it, when you allow yourself to cry without shame, when you choose a different response even though your trauma is begging you to react. This is not for public consumption. This is for your soul's restoration. You're fixing the way you speak to yourself in the mirror. You're fixing the voice in your head that always told you you weren't enough. You're silencing the echo of people who made you feel small, and you're slowly replacing those sounds with truth. You're creating space for joy to return. Not the kind of joy that comes from things or praise, but the kind that rises from knowing you no longer betray yourself to be loved. You've started breaking generational habits, the ones passed down like heirlooms, the silence, the fear, the scarcity, the shame. You're confronting what your parents never could, healing what they didn't have the tools to touch. And even though your hands may shake, you're holding the burden and the blessing of becoming the one who breaks the cycle. This kind of healing is not just for you. It reaches backward and forward. It honors your bloodline and rewrites your future. And no, they won't see it, not right away. People won't know why you've become quieter, more protective of your peace, more selective with your time. They'll wonder why you no longer seek their validation, why you don't explain yourself as much, why you're not performing your healing for their consumption. Let them wonder. Because they didn't see the nights you wrestled with your shadow. They didn't hear the arguments you had with your own mind. They weren't there when you forgave yourself for not knowing better, but you were. You're doing the work of someone who is preparing for more. You're shedding skins that no longer serve you. You're outgrowing fears that used to paralyze you. You're softening where you used to harden. You're learning to sit in discomfort without abandoning yourself. You're learning how to love without losing your identity. You're learning how to stay when it's safe and how to walk away when it's not. This is the hidden work, the honest work, the unglamorous, thankless, silent, beautiful work of becoming whole. There comes a moment in every journey where the weight becomes louder than the road. You feel it in your spine, in your breath, in the way your spirit resists the forward motion. You realize you cannot carry everything. You cannot take every person, every memory, every pain, every version of yourself into the next chapter of your life. Something must be laid down. Something must be released. And though it hurts, though it feels like loss, it is in truth an act of mercy. Because not everything was meant to follow you into your becoming. You are learning that letting go isn't quitting, it's choosing. It's honoring what your future needs more than what your past demanded. There are things you once called precious that have grown heavy in your hands. Ideas that once felt true but now feel limiting. People who once walked with you but now no longer see you. Patterns that once kept you safe but now keep you small. And your soul, wise and quiet and brave, is telling you it's time. Time to loosen your grip. Time to unclench your fists. Time to release what cannot grow with you. This kind of letting go is not dramatic. It doesn't always come with thunder or goodbyes. Sometimes it happens in silence, in slow steps, in private awakenings. You stop calling the number. You stop repeating the excuse. You stop shrinking yourself to fit spaces that never made room for you. You stop negotiating with pain and start building with peace. And even if no one notices the shift, you feel it. You feel the weight lifting, the air clearing, the future calling. There are some wounds that will not close until you stop picking at them. There are some doors that will not open until you stop trying to unlock the ones behind you. There are some parts of yourself that you must grieve, not because they were wrong, but because they were temporary. Survival mode had its season. Pleasing others had its purpose. Holding on had its meaning. But now, where you're going requires less baggage and more truth, less attachment and more freedom, less fear and more faith. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean erasing the past or pretending the pain didn't shape you. It means blessing the lesson and walking on. It means thanking the experience and refusing to relive it. It means looking yourself in the mirror and saying, I deserve to be free. Free from cycles, free from apologies that never come, free from roles that were never yours to play, free from expectations that smother your joy, free from the belief that love must be earned through suffering. You are beginning to feel the beauty of lightness, the freedom in having nothing to prove, The clarity that comes when your soul is no longer entangled in every opinion, every regret, every unfinished conversation. You are not losing your story. You are reclaiming your right to write the rest of it on your own terms. You are not betraying anyone by healing. You are not abandoning your past by choosing your peace. You are simply saying, I love myself enough to stop carrying what isn't mine. And yes, it is uncomfortable. Yes, it is lonely at times. Growth always is. But with each release, you make space. Space for better habits. Space for honest connection. Space for breath. Space for joy that doesn't arrive with conditions. Space for purpose that doesn't feel like punishment. You are shedding the weight of who you had to be in order to survive, and you are stepping into the grace of who you were always meant to become. What cannot be carried forward must be laid down, not in bitterness, but in trust. Trust that what's ahead will require a version of you unburdened, unchained, and unafraid to walk forward with open hands. There's a quiet, sacred turning that happens when you stop settling for crumbs and start recognizing your worth. It doesn't happen overnight. It often begins in the stillness, in that quiet ache in your chest when you realize you've been asking too little of a life that has so much more to give. You begin to feel the hunger, not for things, not for titles, not for the shallow shine of success, but for depth, for truth. For joy that runs deep, and peace that doesn't flee at the first sign of chaos. You no longer want to just survive. You want to live, and not just exist within the lines others drew for you, but to stretch, to soar, to sing your name into spaces where it was once forgotten. You start expecting more from life when you've tasted the bitterness of living beneath your potential. When you've bent yourself to fit into places that were too small for your spirit. When you've lowered your voice so others could feel tall, dimmed your light so someone else could shine, stayed silent when your soul was begging you to speak. That weariness is holy. That ache is wisdom. It's the whisper that says, there must be more than this, and you finally stopped ignoring it. But the deeper shift, the one that really matters, is when you start expecting more from yourself. That's where the transformation takes root. You realize life can't hand you what you're unwilling to reach for. It can't give you what you don't believe you deserve. And so you begin the inner work. You start asking, where have I been playing small? Where have I abandoned myself for comfort? What have I been tolerating out of fear? And the answers come, not always gently, but truthfully. They come in quiet realizations, in hard conversations, in the mirror when you meet your own eyes and no longer look away. You begin to demand more from your days. You're no longer content waking up just to repeat the same cycle. You want mornings with meaning. You want relationships that challenge and uplift you. You want work that feeds your spirit, not just your wallet. You want to stand for something, to give something, to be something beyond what the world labeled you. And so you begin to stretch. You begin to learn. You begin to shed what no longer fits. Old beliefs, old behaviors, old excuses. You stop blaming the world and start building within yourself. And no, this isn't easy, because expecting more from life and from yourself means you must leave comfort behind. You must walk away from the familiar habits, familiar pain, familiar roles you were told to play. You must hold yourself accountable. You must sit in the discomfort of growth. You must unlearn what was taught in fear and relearn what love has to teach you. But even in the struggle, there's a fire, a knowing, a deep and rising strength that says, I was not made for mediocrity. I was not born to live a half life. There is more for me, and I will not stop until I find it. You start choosing differently. You speak with more intention. You love with more discernment. You spend your time like the sacred currency it is. You no longer chase what doesn't feel aligned. You no longer force what doesn't flow. You are not afraid to be alone if it means being honest. You are not afraid to be misunderstood if it means being whole, because once you've started expecting more, you cannot go back. Once you've seen the glimpse of who you could be, you will not be satisfied with who you've had to be just to get by. You are no longer asking life to merely let you exist. You are calling life to rise and meet you where your courage begins. And every day that you choose yourself, every day you show up for your own becoming, every day you ask for more and work toward it, you are declaring that you are not waiting for permission to thrive.